The magic of Madame Bimbo's salon. In the heart of AIA, nestled among the bustling streets and busy shops, there was a salon that was unlike any other. The name Madame Bimbo was whispered in awe, spoken with reverence, as if her salon held secrets that no one else could unlock. Madame Bimbo wasn't just a hairdresser, she was a magician with a comb, a true artist who could transform hair in ways that defied belief. Her reputation for creating perfect, flawless hairstyles was unmatched, and her ability to complete them in under an hour was legendary. Women came from near and far, seeking her out, eager for a taste of her magic. Other salons in the city would take hours to weave intricate braids, twist hair into perfect coils, or style it into elaborate updos. But Madame Bimbo, she did it all in record time, working with such precision and speed that her customers were left breathless. She seemed to know exactly how each strand of hair should fall, each curl should twist, and every braid should weave, as if she had studied each individual's hair in great detail, even before they stepped through the door. But it wasn't just her speed that set her apart, it was the strange and unexplainable aura that surrounded her salon. The one thing that everyone noticed as soon as they stepped inside was the lack of mirrors. Most salons were lined with them, offering customers a chance to check their progress as their hair was being done. But not at Madame Bimbo's. No mirrors adorned the walls, and customers were forbidden from looking at their hair until they walked out of the door. At first, this rule perplexed many newcomers. "How will I know if I like it?" one woman asked hesitantly, settling into a chair. Madame Bimbo would smile gently, her eyes glimmering with an almost secretive knowledge. "You will love it, my dear. Trust me." And every time, without fail, the customers left her salon beaming, thrilled with the final result. The moment they stepped outside and saw their reflection in a storefront window or a passing car, their faces lit up with amazement. It was as if the hair they had never seen was now more beautiful than they could have imagined. Along the walls of Madame Bimbo's salon were shelves lined with wigs, beautiful, luxurious, and impossibly flawless. These weren't just wigs, they were works of art. Some sparkled with every color of the rainbow, while others were made from the softest, silkiest hair imaginable. People couldn't resist the temptation to buy one or more as they left the salon, their hands eagerly reaching for the beautifully crafted pieces displayed in front of them. One day, as a customer marveled at a shimmering, long wavy wig, she turned to Madame Bimbo and asked in awe, "How do you do it? Your wigs look almost too perfect to be real." Madame Bimbo would always smile, a knowing glint in her eye. "It's all about passion and attention to detail. When you love what you do, it shows." Despite her humble words, there was no denying the magic that emanated from her work. Many customers swore that her hairstyles lasted longer and looked better than anything they had ever had before. "My braids lasted for weeks," one woman would say. Another would add, "I don't know how she does it. It's like she's weaving magic into my hair." But not everyone was immediately sold on the allure of Madame Bimbo's salon. A young woman who had just moved to AIA, heard about Madame Bimbo from her friend Dami. They sat together at a local cafe, sipping their drinks when Dami suddenly leaned across the table with excitement in her voice. "You have to go to Madame Bimbo's salon, AIA. It's unbelievable. Look at my hair." Dami twirled a perfect braid, admiring the shine it had maintained for weeks. "And it was done in less than an hour. I haven't had to touch it since." Ye raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "But there are no mirrors, right? How can you know if you like your hair if you can't see it as it's being done?" Dami laughed and waved off the concern. "Trust me, once you see it, you'll forget all about the mirrors. You'll be amazed." Ye wasn't convinced. She was the kind of person who liked to be in control, to know exactly what she was getting into. The idea of sitting in a salon, unable to see the progress, made her feel uneasy. Still, curiosity got the better of her, and after some persuasion from Dami, she decided to visit Madame Bimbo's salon. When she arrived at the salon, she couldn't help but be struck by the energy in the air. The place was packed, with women chatting eagerly as they waited their turn. The atmosphere was lively, buzzing with excitement. As Ie stood in line, she couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. Would she experience the same magic that everyone else seemed to rave about? The line moved quickly, and soon it was Ie's turn. Madame Bimbo greeted her with a warm smile and a welcoming, "Good afternoon, my dear. Come, let me make you beautiful." Ie sat down in the chair, trying to ignore the nagging feeling of uncertainty. She watched as Madame Bimbo began to walk, her hands moving with astonishing speed. Each movement was swift and precise, as if Madame Bimbo could already see the finished product in her mind. The hair flew through her fingers, and before Ie knew it, she felt her transformation complete. "You're fast," Ie said, half in awe, half in disbelief. "How do you do it?" Madame Bimbo chuckled softly. "Speed is my gift, dear. Wait until you see the result." Ie smiled, intrigued but still uncertain about what was to come. As Madame Bimbo finished, Ie reached up to touch her hair. It felt perfect, smooth, soft, and light. She was already surprised by how it felt better than she had imagined. When Ie stepped out into the sunlight, the transformation was undeniable. Strangers on the street stopped to admire her hair, their compliments pouring in. "Your hair looks amazing," one woman exclaimed. "Where did you get it done?" another asked. By the time Ie reached home, she couldn't wait to look in the mirror. When she did, she gasped in awe. Her braids were flawless, gleaming in the light, and they looked even better than she could have hoped for. It was as if Madame Bimbo had woven a touch of magic into her hair. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and dialed Dami's number. "You were right. Madame Bimbo is incredible. I love it." Dami's laughter echoed through the phone. "I told you. It's like she's got some kind of magic touch." And so, the magic of Madame Bimbo's salon continued to spread, weaving its way through the city like an enchanting spell. People were drawn to her, captivated by the promise of perfection and the mysterious allure of her work. As more customers flocked to her, the question remained, what was the secret behind Madame Bimbo's skill? Why no mirrors? And how was she able to create such beauty with the speed of lightning? A glimpse of perfection. Ie couldn't stop smiling as she walked out of Madame Bimbo's salon. The compliments from strangers still echoed in her mind. "Your hair is gorgeous," one woman had said, stopping her on the street. Another had remarked, "Where did you get it done? It looks so flawless." The admiration seemed endless, and each comment made her feel like she was walking on air. By the time she reached home, she couldn't wait to get a good look at herself in the mirror. When she did, the sight took her breath away. Her braids were perfect, not a strand out of place. They gleamed in the sunlight streaming through the window, and the texture was so smooth that it felt like silk. The style was sleek and modern, but it still had a timeless elegance. The shine on her braids made them look as though they had been sculpted, every twist and turn so precise that it was almost impossible to believe it was all done in less than an hour. Ie had never experienced anything like it. She ran her fingers through the braids, marveling at how light and pain-free the whole process had been. How had Madame Bimbo done it so quickly? How had she created such perfect, effortless beauty in such a short amount of time? The questions lingered in her mind, but she couldn't shake the sense of wonder that filled her. Madame Bimbo had truly worked magic on her hair. Ie called Dami immediately, eager to share her excitement. "Dami, you were right. My hair is perfect. I can't believe how amazing it looks," she said, practically shouting into the phone. Dami's voice laughed on the other end, a sound of pure satisfaction. "Told you. She's incredible, isn't she? I swear, no one else can do what she does. But even as Ye reveled in her newfound beauty, a small, nagging thought crept into her mind. Why were there no mirrors? Why couldn't she see her hair while it was being done? She had trusted Madame Bimbo's promise that she would love the result, but still, the absence of mirrors made her uneasy. Was it just an odd quirk of the salon, or was there something more to it? Over the next few days, Ye couldn't help but notice how her hair continued to shine. The braids stayed perfect, not a single strand loosened or frayed. She had to admit, there was something extraordinary about Madame Bimbo's work, something beyond what any ordinary hairdresser could achieve. But that unanswered question about the mirror still lingered in the back of her mind. Curiosity gnawed at her, and she couldn't resist the urge to return to Madame Bimbo's salon. She had to know more. Was it really just skill, or was there something else at play? A few weeks later, Ye found herself standing once again in the bustling salon, waiting for her turn. This time, however, she felt more cautious. The excitement was still there, but so was the doubt. What was the secret behind Madame Bimbo's talent? Why did she insist on the no mirror rule? The more she thought about it, the more she realized that the salon had a strange aura about it. The women who visited seemed almost enchanted, their faces lit with smiles as they left the shop. But why? As she waited in line, Ye overheard some of the other customers chatting excitedly about their experiences. One woman, sitting next to her, couldn't stop praising Madame Bimbo's ability. "I don't know how she does it," the woman said, almost in awe. "She has this amazing gift. I've never been in and out of a salon so quickly, and my hair is always flawless when I leave." Ye nodded, listening intently. "I know what you mean," she replied, trying to sound casual. "My braids were perfect last time. It's like she's doing magic." The woman leaned in, her voice dropping a little. "That's exactly it. You've heard the rumors, right? They say Madame Bimbo has some kind of secret. Something that makes her hands move faster than anyone else's. Some of the women say she's not just a hairdresser, she's something more." Ye's ears perked up. "What do you mean, something more?" The woman glanced around before speaking in a hushed tone. "I don't know exactly, but I've heard stories. Some say she made a deal with someone who gave her the ability to do all this. Others say her skills come from a mysterious source, something magical. I'm not sure what to believe, but whatever it is, it's working." Ye's heart raced. Was it possible? Could Madame Bimbo's abilities truly come from something beyond ordinary talent? She had always assumed it was just an incredibly gifted stylist, but now doubts began to creep into her mind. Before she could ask more, Madame Bimbo appeared, greeting her warmly with her usual serene smile. "Good afternoon, my dear. Come, let me make you beautiful," she said, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. Ye followed her to the chair, but this time, her mind was focused not just on the transformation ahead, but on the mystery that still surrounded Madame Bimbo. The whispers from the other customers had only fueled her curiosity, but what could she do with this new information? What was the real story behind the salon's success, and why was everyone so quick to believe in its magic? As Madame Bimbo began working on Ye's hair, she couldn't help but marvel at the speed and precision with which her hands moved. It was like watching a dancer perform, every movement fluid and graceful. Ye tried to keep her eyes on Madame Bimbo's hands, but before long, she found herself caught in the rhythm of the process, relaxing into the familiar comfort of the salon's atmosphere. But in the back of her mind, the question still gnawed at her: what was Madame Bimbo's secret? The more Ye tried to focus on her hair, the more her curiosity grew. She needed to know the truth. The unanswered questions. Ye couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. Her first visit to Madame Bimbo's salon had been magical, but as the days passed, her curiosity grew stronger. The speed, the precision, the perfection, none of it felt entirely natural, no matter how skilled Madame Bimbo was. The stories she'd overheard in the salon about the mysterious source of Madame Bimbo's talent made her even more determined to uncover the truth. So, despite the lingering doubts, Yeye found herself once again sitting in Madame Bimbo's salon, waiting for her turn. The bustling atmosphere was familiar, women chattering excitedly, the hum of hairdryers, the rhythm of combs walking through strands of hair. Yet this time, Yeye couldn't ignore the unease growing inside her. She watched as Madame Bimbo moved from one chair to another, her hands flying over each customer's hair with the same effortless grace, but the questions lingered in her mind. As she was led to the chair, Yeye's heart raced. She had been here before, but now, it was different. The absence of mirrors, the almost magical speed with which Madame Bimbo walked, none of it seemed entirely real. What if there was more to this salon than anyone was willing to admit? Madame Bimbo greeted her as warmly as ever, her voice soothing. "Good afternoon, my dear. Let me make you beautiful once again." Yeye nodded, forcing a smile. She didn't want to seem overly suspicious, but something inside her told her that she couldn't leave here until she had answers. As Madame Bimbo began working on her hair, Yeye tried to stay calm. But her eyes kept flicking to Madame Bimbo's hands. There was something unnerving about how fast they moved, how effortlessly they glided through her hair. Yeye's mind raced with possibilities. Was this all just sheer skill, or was there something unnatural about it? Curiosity overtook her. She had to know for sure. In a quick, almost unconscious motion, she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She held it up discreetly, aiming the camera at her reflection in the salon's polished wood paneling. As the screen illuminated, Yeye's breath caught in her throat. Her hair, it was moving. At first, it was subtle, almost imperceptible. A few strands shifted here and there, as if caught by an invisible breeze. But then it became more pronounced. The braids, which had been neatly arranged only moments before, began to twist and weave themselves. It was as if the hair was no longer being styled by human hands, but was instead being manipulated by some unseen force. Yeye's fingers trembled as she watched, unable to look away from the phone screen. The braids seemed to form on their own, strands twisting and interlocking as if guided by an invisible hand. It was mesmerizing and terrifying at the same time. Her hair was styling itself, without any physical contact from Madame Bimbo. Panic surged through Yeye. She quickly lowered her phone, trying to suppress the rising fear. Her pulse quickened, and she felt a cold sweat forming on her brow. What was happening? Was it some trick of the lighting, some optical illusion? No, she had seen it clearly. Her hair was moving, shifting, and styling itself. She could hardly breathe, the weight of the realization pressing down on her chest. Before she could gather her thoughts, a scream escaped her lips, uncontrollable and high-pitched. The room went silent. Women turned their heads, startled by the sound. One customer gasped and jumped out of her chair, while another instinctively grabbed her handbag, her eyes wide with alarm. The other customers glanced nervously between Yeye and Madame Bimbo, unsure of what had just happened. Madame Bimbo appeared at Yeye's side in an instant. Her expression remained calm, almost too calm. There was no panic in her eyes, no concern for the disturbance. She simply gazed at Yeye with a quiet intensity, as if she had expected this moment. "What's wrong, my dear?" Madame Bimbo asked softly, her voice smooth and reassuring. Yeye's breath was coming in ragged gasps, and her voice trembled as she tried to form words. My hair, it's moving. It's styling itself, without you touching it." Madame Bimbo's eyes flickered briefly, but her smile never faltered. "It's just the way things work here," she said dismissively. Nothing to be alarmed about. But I saw it. Ye protested, her mind racing. I watched my hair move on its own. I saw it with my own eyes. How is that possible? The other customers, still watching in stunned silence, exchanged nervous glances. Some whispered to one another, but no one seemed to know how to respond. It was as if they, too, had seen strange things in the salon but were too afraid to speak up. Madame Bimbo's calmness only added to the unease he felt. There's nothing to fear, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's just part of the magic that makes this salon special. Ye felt her stomach churn. Magic. Was that really the answer? Was that why Madame Bimbo's hands moved so quickly? Was it the secret behind her perfect, lightning-fast styles? She had always assumed it was just talent, just extraordinary skill. But now, after witnessing her hairstyling itself, a different thought began to form in her mind. Magic. Ye whispered to herself, barely able to comprehend what was happening. Could Madame Bimbo's talents truly be supernatural? Was there some kind of dark force at work here? Or was it all just a carefully crafted illusion? Ye didn't know what to believe anymore. She tried to shake the fear off, but her unease only deepened. Madame Bimbo's calmness, her dismissive response, only added to the mystery surrounding the salon. The more Ye tried to make sense of it, the more questions arose. Why was Madame Bimbo so unfazed by what had just happened? Was this a regular occurrence? And why had her hair started moving on its own? Her mind was spinning, but one thing was certain, Ye couldn't leave the salon without uncovering the truth. There was something hidden beneath the surface, something that Madame Bimbo wasn't telling her. And Ye was determined to find out what it was. As Madame Bimbo resumed her work on Ye's hair, her hands moved just as swiftly as before. Ye couldn't tear her eyes away from the strands of hair twisting and weaving themselves into perfection. She was trapped in a strange web of mystery and magic, unsure of what was real and what was an illusion. One thing was clear, whatever was happening at Madame Bimbo's salon, it wasn't just a simple hairdressing service. There was something much darker, much more mysterious, behind the scenes, and Ye was determined to uncover it. Uncovering the truth. Ye couldn't shake the vision of her hair moving on its own. The eerie, unsettling feeling had lingered in her thoughts long after she left Madame Bimbo's salon that day. Despite her best efforts to ignore it, the mystery only deepened. What was really happening in that salon? Was it just extraordinary talent, or was there something far more sinister at play? Determined to uncover the truth, Ye reached out to Dami, who had been her confidant throughout this strange journey. They met at a quiet cafe, the air thick with tension as Ye recounted her latest experience at the salon. The moving hair, Madame Bimbo's dismissive response, and the unsettling calmness of the other customers. I have to know what's going on, Dami, Ye said, her voice low and urgent. I saw my hair moving without anyone touching it. I can't just let this go. Dami's expression darkened. I know. There's definitely something off about that place. Everyone talks about Madame Bimbo's magic, but it's starting to sound like more than just skill. We need to find out what's really going on. The two friends decided to start their investigation. They spent the next few days visiting local salons, talking to former employees of Madame Bimbo's, and speaking to customers who had visited the salon in the past. The deeper they dug, the more strange and unsettling the truths they uncovered. One afternoon, they visited an old woman who had once worked at Madame Bimbo's salon. She was retired now, living in a modest home just outside of AIA. As they sat in her living room, the woman spoke reluctantly, her voice barely above a whisper. Madame Bimbo wasn't always like this, she said, shaking her head. When I first started working with her, she was good, sure, but nothing like what she is now. She was fast, but she didn't have this magic. It all changed one day when a strange woman came into the salon. Ie leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. A strange woman. What happened? The old woman hesitated, her eyes darting around nervously, as if afraid someone might be listening. I don't know who she was, but she wasn't like the other customers. She was older, elegant, with dark, piercing eyes. She came in and asked Madame Bimbo to step outside for a moment. They were gone for about an hour, and when they came back, Madame Bimbo had changed. She was faster, more precise, and her hands moved like they were alive. People started flocking to her after that, but I never felt right about it. Ie and Dami exchanged uneasy glances. Did you ever see the woman again? Dami asked. The old woman shook her head. No. She disappeared after that. But I heard rumors, strange rumors. Some say she gave Madame Bimbo a vial of oil. That's what I've been told, anyway. After that, Madame Bimbo's hands seemed to have a life of their own, and her salon became the talk of the town. The mention of the vial of oil sent a chill down Ie's spine. She had heard similar whispers before, rumors about Madame Bimbo's mysterious transformation and the strange source of her power. But now, it was beginning to sound like something far darker than she had imagined. We need to find out more about that woman, Ie said, her voice firm. Do you think anyone else knows where she went? The old woman shrugged, looking away. I don't know. But be careful. There's something about Madame Bimbo now that doesn't feel right. People say she made a pact, but what kind of pact, no one knows. After leaving the old woman's house, Ie and Dami continued their search for answers. They spoke to more former employees, some of whom shared similar stories of Madame Bimbo's rapid transformation and the strange occurrences that seemed to surround her. One woman, who had worked at the salon in its early days, described how the atmosphere in the salon had shifted after the mysterious woman's visit. Before she came, it was a normal salon, the former employee said. But afterward, it was like everything changed. Madame Bimbo became obsessed with speed, doing hair faster than anyone else, as if she couldn't stop. And people started saying there was something off about her. Like she wasn't entirely human anymore. The rumors about magic, strange deals, and invisible forces grew more unsettling with every conversation Ie and Dami had. It was clear that something otherworldly was involved in Madame Bimbo's rise to fame. Finally, they decided they could no longer keep their suspicions to themselves. It was time to confront Madame Bimbo directly. The next day, Ie and Dami arrived at Madame Bimbo's salon, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The usual bustle of the salon filled the air, laughter, chatter, the sound of hairdryers and combs, but Ie couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. When it was Ie's turn, she took a deep breath. Madame Bimbo, she said, her voice steady, we need to talk. We know something's not right here. Madame Bimbo's eyes flickered with something, fear, perhaps. Or was it just resignation? She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. What do you mean, my dear? Dami stepped forward, her voice unwavering. We know about the woman who gave you the oil, Madame Bimbo. We know that you didn't just gain your skills by talent alone. We know there's magic at work here. For a moment, there was silence. Madame Bimbo's calm exterior began to crack, and her hands trembled slightly. She sighed, a heavy, almost defeated sound, and motioned for them to sit. You're right, she said quietly. There is something more, but it wasn't always like this. I was just a regular hairdresser when she came to me. Ie and Dami listened intently as Madame Bimbo began to confess. She came to my salon one day, an older woman with piercing eyes, Madame Bimbo continued, her voice almost a whisper. She told me I had great potential, that I could be more than just another hairdresser. I was struggling back then, my business wasn't doing well. She offered me a vial of oil, and she said it would give me the talent I needed to succeed. There was a catch, though, no mirrors. I wasn't allowed to let anyone see their hair until they left. I didn't question it, I was desperate. Madame Bimbo's hands were shaking now, her eyes clouded with regret. At first, it was amazing. My hands moved faster, I could create perfect hairstyles in minutes. People came from all over to see me. But as time passed, the price of the deal became clear. The more I used the oil, the more I felt disconnected from myself. And now, my hands, they move on their own. I can't stop it. It's like I'm being controlled by something beyond my control. Ye and Dami were stunned, their hearts heavy with the realization of what Madame Bimbo had done. So it's true, Ye said softly. You made a pact with her, with the mysterious woman. Madame Bimbo nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't know what I was getting into. I never imagined it would cost me so much. I've tried to break free, but the oil is still inside me. It controls me now, and I can't escape it. The truth had been uncovered, but it was far darker than either Ie or Dami had expected. Madame Bimbo's fame, her extraordinary abilities, everything had come at a price. A price that had trapped her in a pack she couldn't break. Ie looked at Dami, a mix of sympathy and dread in her heart. They had uncovered the truth, but the story wasn't over yet. The real question now was, what would happen to Madame Bimbo, and to anyone else who came to her salon, for all the secrets still left to be uncovered? The dark deal. Madame Bimbo's voice trembled as she continued, her confession now laid bare before Ie and Dami. The calm facade she had carefully maintained for so long seemed to crumble with every word she spoke. She sat back in her chair, her hands clasped together tightly, as if holding herself together against the weight of her own regret. I thought I was making a smart choice, you know. Madame Bimbo began, her eyes downcast, her voice quiet with guilt. I had nothing. My salon was failing. I could barely make enough money to pay rent, let alone keep the doors open. Then she came to me, the woman with the piercing eyes. Ye and Dami exchanged looks, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that this mysterious woman had been the catalyst for everything that had gone wrong. She told me that she saw potential in me, Madame Bimbo continued, her voice growing more distant as she relived the memory. That I could be someone, that my talent could be extraordinary if I just accepted her offer. She said the world was full of women who wanted the best, who wanted perfection, and I had the ability to give that to them. But I had to pay a price. No mirrors in the salon. No one could see their hair until they walked out the door. Dami's eyes widened. That was the deal. No mirrors. That's it. Madame Bimbo nodded solemnly. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. But then, things changed. After I used the oil, after I took the gift, I could feel it. It was like the oil gave me an energy I didn't understand. My hands moved faster, more precisely. I could do in minutes what took other hairdressers hours. The lines at my salon grew longer. People started talking about me. I became famous, overnight. It was everything I'd ever wanted. She paused, her expression darkening. But the more I used it, the more I realized there were consequences. The oil had a power that I couldn't control. It's like it took over, controlling my every movement. At first, it was a gift. Then, it became a curse. Ie leaned in, her heart heavy with the weight of what Madame Bimbo was saying. What do you mean? What happened? Madame Bimbo closed her eyes, her voice barely above a whisper. The oil, it connected to something inside me, something darker. I became obsessed with speed, with perfection. And the rule about the mirrors, it wasn't just a quirk. It was a protection. The woman who gave me the oil told me that if anyone broke the rule and saw their hair while I was working on it, the magic would unravel. It would destroy me, the oil, everything. Dami's face tightened with concern. So, what happens if someone sees their hair? What happens to you? Madame Bimbo's hands trembled as she spoke. If the rule is broken, the magic will turn against me. My body will begin to wither away, and my hands will become nothing more than an uncontrollable force. The price would be my life, the very thing that made me special would destroy me. A shiver ran down Ia's spine. She had seen it the moment her hair began to move on its own, and now it made sense. That was the moment when the magic had been broken, when the rule had been violated. You were afraid of that happening, Ia said softly, her voice barely a whisper. That's why you were so calm when I saw my hair moving. Madame Bimbo nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Yes. I thought I could keep the magic under control, but the longer I used it, the harder it became to hold on to. I've seen the toll it's taken on me, the strain on my body, the exhaustion, the way I feel like I'm losing myself. It's all falling apart, Ia. And now I don't know if I can stop it. Ia felt a deep surge of sympathy for Madame Bimbo, but also a flicker of anger. You shouldn't have made that deal. You should have known better. Madame Bimbo's eyes met Ia's, a mixture of guilt and regret in her gaze. I know. I was foolish. But I was desperate. I thought I was making the right choice, but it's been eating me alive. I can't escape it. I can't undo what I've done. Dami took a deep breath, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. But, for the first time in a long time, Madame Bimbo allowed herself to hope. Do you really think we can do it? Do you think there's a way to undo this magic? Ia nodded firmly. We'll find the answers. We'll break this curse, no matter what it takes. Madame Bimbo looked at her with gratitude in her eyes, but also a deep sadness. I've never been this scared in my life, Ia. I can feel the magic pulling at me, at my soul. It's taking everything I am. Please, help me, before it's too late. Ia and Dami exchanged a determined glance. The road ahead would be difficult, and the truth they sought might be even darker than they feared. But they couldn't let Madame Bimbo suffer any longer. Together, they would uncover the rest of the mystery and find a way to end the deal that had cost Madame Bimbo so much. The dark deal had been made, but now it was time to break it. The road to redemption. As the days passed, the toll of Madame Bimbo's deal became more and more apparent. The once graceful, swift hands that had worked magic on her customers' hair now trembled uncontrollably. Madame Bimbo's health deteriorated rapidly, and she could feel it deep in her bones, in every joint, every fiber of her being. The oil that had once granted her the ability to create beauty at lightning speed now seemed to be turning against her. Her hands, once light and nimble, had become swollen and painful, and the energy that had powered her had begun to fade. Every morning, Madame Bimbo woke to the gnawing ache in her hands, a sharp reminder of the pact she had made so long ago. The pain was unexplainable, an agonizing sensation that no remedy could ease. Even her vision seemed to blur at times, and a dark cloud hung over her, as though the magic that had once fueled her success was now draining her very life force. Ia and Dami couldn't bear to see Madame Bimbo suffer like this. The woman they had come to admire for her skill and talent was now a shadow of the person she once was. The desperate look in Madame Bimbo's eyes, the constant exhaustion, and the way her body seemed to wither away each day. They knew they had to help. We need to take you to a hospital, Ia said one morning, her voice filled with concern. This is beyond anything we can do on our own. Madame Bimbo hesitated, her eyes dark with shame. I've caused this myself. I don't deserve help. Dami stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Madame Bimbo's shoulder. We are doing this for you. You deserve to be free of this curse. You don't have to face it alone. With great reluctance, Madame Bimbo agreed, and the three of them made their way to the hospital. As they arrived, the doctors immediately noticed the extent of her condition. Her swollen hands, the pallor of her skin, and the signs of extreme fatigue were clear indicators that something was terribly wrong. We'll run some tests, one of the doctors said gently, but I've never seen anything quite like this before. Whatever's affecting you, it's not just a physical ailment. Madame Bimbo nodded, her heart sinking. She had already known the truth, the magic that had given her success was now slowly killing her. But the doctors couldn't offer any concrete answers, only vague suggestions and unhelpful prescriptions. As Madame Bimbo lay in the hospital bed, the weight of her decisions crashed down on her. The pain in her hands was unbearable, and yet it was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She had been so desperate, so consumed by her ambition, that she had sold her soul for fame and success. And now, all she had gained was slipping away, leaving her empty and broken. It was then that a group of pastors arrived at the hospital. They had heard of Madame Bimbo's plight and had come to offer their prayers. They were kind and gentle, speaking words of faith and hope, trying to comfort the woman who had fallen so far from grace. Madame Bimbo sat up as the pastors gathered around her, their hands resting on her shoulders and her arms. She could feel their warmth, their sincere concern, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to weep. I've made so many mistakes, she sobbed, her voice raw with regret. I was so blinded by my desire for success that I didn't see the cost. Now it's too late. I can feel myself fading, and I know it's because of the pact I made. I don't deserve to be healed. I don't deserve redemption. One of the pastors, an older man with kind eyes, placed a hand on her forehead and spoke softly. Madame Bimbo, God's grace is boundless. No one is beyond redemption. It is never too late to repent and seek forgiveness. But Madame Bimbo could hardly bring herself to believe it. I used others to get what I wanted, she whispered through her tears. I took something I didn't deserve, and now I'm paying the price. I can't undo it. The pastor's voice was gentle, but firm. Redemption isn't about undoing what's been done. It's about turning away from the path that led you here and finding the courage to walk a new one. You can't change the past, but you can choose a different future. Madame Bimbo's tears flowed freely as she thought of all the lives she had touched, the women who had sat in her salon, trusting her to make them beautiful, only to unknowingly feed the power that was destroying her. She had taken so much from them, and now it was all coming back to haunt her. The pastors prayed over her, their words of faith and healing wrapping around her like a warm blanket. For the first time in years, Madame Bimbo allowed herself to truly surrender, to let go of her guilt and the shame that had held her captive for so long. I'm so sorry, she whispered through her sobs. I never meant for it to end like this. I just wanted to be good enough. I thought I was doing the right thing, but now I see the truth. The pastors continued to pray, and as they did, something began to shift within Madame Bimbo. The weight of her past still hung heavy on her heart, but for the first time, she began to feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps redemption was possible. Perhaps she could find peace, even if she couldn't erase the mistakes she had made. After the pastors left, Yei and Dami stayed with Madame Bimbo, their silent presence offering comfort in the quiet aftermath of the prayer. Madame Bimbo lay back in her bed, exhausted but strangely calm, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. I never thought I could feel this way, Madame Bimbo said, her voice soft. For so long, I carried the weight of my actions on my own, believing that I deserved this pain. But now, I think I can finally let go. Yei reached for her hand, her grip firm and reassuring. You're not alone anymore. We'll help you through this, Madam Bimbo. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself. Dami nodded. We'll help you find a way to make things right. One step at a time. Madam Bimbo closed her eyes, her hands still aching but now filled with a new sense of hope. The road to redemption wouldn't be easy, it would take time, and it would require deep reflection and change. But for the first time in a long time, she believed that it was possible. Her journey was far from over, but the road to redemption had begun. And as the days passed, Madam Bimbo would begin to heal, not just physically, but spiritually as well, taking the first steps toward a future where she no longer had to hide behind the dark deal that had once consumed her. She had been lost, but now, for the first time, she could see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. A new beginning. The days that followed the prayer were nothing short of miraculous. Madam Bimbo's health began to improve at an extraordinary rate. Where her hands had once been swollen, painful, and unnaturally stiff, they now started to regain their former agility and strength. The gnawing ache that had plagued her day and night slowly subsided, replaced by a sense of lightness and relief she had long forgotten. As she sat in her hospital bed, looking at her hands, she couldn't believe the change. Her fingers, once swollen and discolored, were now smooth and supple, no longer trembling with the burden of the magic that had held them captive for so long. The once dark and cloudy energy that had taken hold of her body now seemed to dissipate, leaving her feeling free, as though a great weight had been lifted from her soul. It was as though her body was shedding not only the physical pain but also the darkness of the pact she had made so many years ago. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Madam Bimbo looked at herself in the mirror and saw not just a woman healed physically, but a woman transformed spiritually. The fear and guilt that had consumed her began to fade, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Her eyes, once clouded with regret, now sparkled with a quiet confidence, a confidence rooted not in magic or shortcuts, but in the strength of her own soul. The process of healing had not been easy. There had been moments of doubt, moments when she wondered if the price of her past would always weigh her down. But through prayer, support, and her own determination to make things right, Madam Bimbo had found the strength to confront her mistakes and find redemption. With her health restored and her spirit renewed, Madam Bimbo knew it was time to leave her old life behind. The salon that had once brought her fame, wealth, and endless admiration was now a symbol of her darkest moments. She couldn't continue to work there, knowing that every braid, every twist, every hairstyle had been created under the influence of that dark magic. It was time to close the doors on the past. She made the decision with a heavy heart, but also with a sense of liberation. It's time for a new beginning, she whispered to herself as she locked the doors of her old salon for the last time. The women who had once relied on her for their beauty and transformation could no longer be a part of the illusion she had built. It was time to be honest with herself, and with them. A few weeks later, Madam Bimbo opened a new salon. This time, there were no shortcuts, no mysterious oils, no hidden secrets. She worked with care and precision, taking the time to listen to each customer, to understand their needs, and to ensure that every hairstyle was a reflection of the trust they had placed in her. The new salon was modest but filled with warmth and light. It had mirrors, big and clear, where women could see themselves at every step of the process, just as they should. Word of her new salon spread quickly, and soon, women from all over AI came to see Madam Bimbo, not just for her talent, but for the honesty and integrity she now embodied. She no longer relied on magic or tricks to earn a living. She earned her customers' trust through hard work, dedication, and a genuine desire to make them feel beautiful, inside and out. As she walked, Madam Bimbo felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. She was no longer the woman who had sought fame at any cost. She was no longer the woman who had made a deal with dark forces in exchange for success. She was a woman at peace with herself, free from the shadows of her past. Her hands, though no longer infused with the magic they had once held, were more powerful now than they had ever been. They moved with a newfound grace, not because of any supernatural force, but because they were guided by her passion, her skill, and her heart. She no longer had to fight against the flow of her own body. Her hands moved with purpose, every stroke a reflection of the healing she had undergone. And as her reputation began to rebuild itself, so did Madame Bimbo. She learned to trust herself again, to believe in the power of hard work and the importance of doing things the right way. She had learned the hard way that shortcuts often lead to dark paths, and that true success comes from authenticity, not illusion. One evening, as she closed the door of her new salon, Madame Bimbo stood for a moment in the quiet of the night. She looked up at the stars above her, feeling a sense of gratitude and wonder she had never experienced before. She had come so far, had faced the darkest parts of herself and had come out the other side stronger. Her heart swelled with peace as she whispered, "Thank you, not just to the universe, but to herself." She had found her way back. Madame Bimbo was no longer just a name associated with beauty and magic. She was a symbol of redemption, a woman who had learned the true cost of ambition and had found a path to healing. And in her new life, she had discovered a happiness that had eluded her for so long, happiness built not on the fleeting illusions of success, but on the lasting fulfillment of living truthfully. And as the days passed, her customers continued to pour in, not just for her talent, but for the woman she had become. Madame Bimbo's new salon flourished, and so did she, knowing that her future was now hers to shape, not through magic, but through honesty, love, and the wisdom that came from embracing her past and walking forward into a new, brighter future.